What is happening, guys? We are back with another tutorial already. Thank you for the positive comments on the last video. It definitely did give me motivation to get in front of the camera and record this one. Today we are going through color grading. Now I color grade on DaVinci Resolve Studio. If you have the free version, that's also okay, but there might be some features you don't have. Now the clip or video we're going to be color grading today is my White Lotus real estate video. I had a lot of comments on this video asking how I color graded it. So here it is. All right, let's just get straight into it. So what we have here is one clip from the White Lotus video. It is the model just standing in front of the camera. Now what I'm going to do is switch to a timeline that doesn't have the color grade applied, just so I can show you guys the difference. As you can see here. The next thing I'm going to do is head over to my color tab. Now before we jump into the node tree, I'm just going to head over to the bottom right and click settings, color management, and make sure my color science is set to DaVinci YRGB and not color managed. Now the reason for this is because we're about to tell DaVinci what color space we want to edit in. Heading over to your first node. Now I have it labeled CST. Now what that means is color space transform. Heading over to your right hand side where the library is, you want to search that, color space transform, and you want to drag it onto that first node. Now in this first node, we're going to pump in our camera information. So I shot this on an A7S III. So I'm just going to head down to Sony S-Gamut3 Sin. And then my input gamma was shot S-Log3. So I'm just going to select S-Log3. That will vary depending on what camera you guys are using. The next thing you want to do is output color space. I like to set mine in DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. Now the reason for this is I feel as I get the best color depth when editing in this color space. The next thing you want to do is head over to your last node, and this is also labeled CST, because in this node what we're going to do is we're going to transform that DaVinci Wide Gamut into Rec. 709. So we're going to go DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, and then into Rec. 709 and Gamma 2.4, which is a presentable file. Awesome. Now I actually have my monitor set to Gamma 2.4, so timeline versus export is very similar and it's pretty good. Next up, we want to go to our second node, which I have labeled NR, which is for noise reduction. Now I like to place my noise reduction node either second or third, depending on the clip. So if the clip is like the one in front of us at the moment, noise reduction will go second as a result of the clip being exposed correctly. Now, if I'm shooting the interior of a house and I accidentally shoot the clip too dark, it's not exposed to the right or two stops up, I will then need to make my exposure adjustment first, which may bring out a bit of graininess and artifacting in the shadows, and then I will do my noise reduction after that node. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to do noise reduction second. So we're going to head down here to the motion effects. And we're just going to zoom in on the model's face because there isn't much noise in this clip, but just to smooth it out a little bit. First thing is temporal noise reduction, and we're going to set this to 3 frames. What this does is it looks, 3 frames either the side of the current frame we're working on. Motion estimation type, you want to go better. It does make a difference. Motion range is medium. There's not much movement in the clip, but it's also not a static clip. Then we're going to play with the temporal threshold. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to unlink them. I'm just going to slide them together. I will go do another tutorial that gets more in depth in regards to noise reduction. So just zooming in and looking at the model's face, I'm just going to drag these up slightly. As I said, there's not much noise in these clips. Now what you will find with noise reduction, whether you take the slider the whole way to the end or you keep it towards the bottom, at some point it's going to stop working and it's your job to find that spot. Now usually you can see this on your RGB parade, but as a result of being so minimal, it doesn't actually show up. So I'm just going to slide it about. From the looks of it, it looks around 6. Next you want to do is work left to right. So next is spatial noise reduction. Your mode you want to set to enhanced. It does make a difference. It can put strain on your computer. Radius more, and then the threshold just ever so slightly. Now a good rule of thumb is double. So if your temporal is 6, then your spatial will be around, I don't know, 10 to 15 sort of thing. Now from the looks of it, this actually stops working around yeah, it's about 11, 12, so about dead on, guys. So I'm just going to turn that node off and on just so you can see what we did there. Very minimal, but it just smooths out her skin that little bit. Awesome. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump over one more node. We're going to head to exposure. Actually, before we go to exposure, we're going to head back to the second to last node and we're going to apply our LUT. And the reason for this is so we can actually see what it's going to look like as we're editing it. Otherwise, you apply the LUT at the end, it'll be all out of whack. So I actually use a custom LUT that I have built, and it is called Juco Source. So just here. And all this LUT does is just adds a bit of blue in the shadows, a bit of warmth in the highlights, a bit more contrast, that sort of thing. I can't say it's a film look because it's not, but that's what I'm trying to do. So next up is exposure. Now with exposure, there's plenty of ways to do this. The way I do this is I head over to the HDR tab, and where it says global, you see a slider below it which says EXP, and that's for exposure, and we're making a global adjustment. So you can slide that up and down. I am just going to use my micro panel and just to spin it around, just looking at my parade, trying to bring it to the right spot. I'm going to say about there. Awesome. So I'm going to turn that off and on to see what we did. Cool. Now it has brought down the exposure a fair bit. The model is starting to look dark, but that's okay. We're going to fix it. The next thing we want to do is jump over to contrast. You can find this in your color wheels. And we're just going to adjust that ever so slightly just to pump in a little bit more depth into those details. So just slightly turning it in, stretching it out. Now you don't want to stretch it too far. So your color parade will do this sort of thing. So just ever so slightly and just find that depth so it doesn't look so pale. I'm just going to turn that off and on, show what we did. Awesome. So we just brought some more detail into her arm, into the windows behind her and things like that. Next up is saturation. Now with saturation, this is a very subjective adjustment. I've heard all different things. Personally, I like to keep it around 55 to 60, but mostly looking at the model's skin tones, or if you're shooting a living room or a bedroom, making sure you're not bringing out too many color casts and stuff like that. So just looking at her skin, I'm just going to play with the saturation here, play with her skin here, and pump that in. Just turning that node off and on, just so we can see what we're doing. Awesome, I think that's a sweet spot. It doesn't make her skin look too orange, so I think that's where I want to be. Cool, we'll zoom out there, off and on. So let's bring a bit of color there, things like that. Then we like to go into the temperature, the HDR and color wheels, and then the curves. And I like to do this on a parallel mix. The reason why is if you do these one after the other, the node after the node will start to adjust the node prior, and it gets a bit messy. So what I like to do is edit them individually and then bring them back on a parallel mixer. So first up is temperature. Now a good place to see your temperature, guys, is on your vector scope. Now on your vector scope, you're going to get this thing. So basically, at the moment, mine is showing that it's a little bit blue heavy. It's also looking a little bit green, I think. So I'm just going to play with the tint and the temperature there. So first thing I want to do is just bring up the temperature a little bit, just to about there, I think. And then you can see it's sort of drifting to the left. So I want to bring it a bit more to the right, and just take out the greens without putting too much magenta in though. So just about there. And if you go too far, you're going to get this sort of thing, which is not what you want. So just that little bit in. I think about there is a good spot. So you can see how it's pulled out that green look. And now it's looking a little bit warmer. I might even add just a little bit more warmth. I reckon about there, guys. Awesome, that is looking so much better. I'm not gonna actually play with my color wheels and my HDR here. I'm actually gonna jump that and go straight to my curves. And then in my curves, I'm going to pump in a little bit of more, bring the highlights up, bring the shadows down, a little bit more contrast. So back to my parade. I'm just gonna slightly drag this up and then slightly bring this down, just a very tiny S-curve. Yeah, awesome. Now I'm not too worried about the model darkening up because we're about to fix that. All right, onto the power windows. So first up, I've got it labeled sun, and the reason I have this labeled sun is because I really like playing with sort of the natural light that is there on the day and sort of exaggerating what was there. So you might have done this in like Adobe Lightroom or something along those lines where you use a gradient to lighten one side of the picture or something like that. So what we're going to do with the sun, I'm actually not going to adjust the exposure or the highlights too much. What I'm actually going to do is change the color of it. So I'm going to get a power window, I'm going to get a gradient, and I'm going to draw it left to right. And now we're just working on this area here. And then I'm going to go to my color wheels. Now you can do this by adjusting your color wheels, or you can do this by adjusting the temperature. I'm actually just going to adjust the temperature of the selected area, which is then going to warm it up for me. So as you can see, as I warm it up, it starts to get that orange hue. Now you don't want to do too much because it might look a bit weird, but about there. Cool. Maybe a little bit less, I think. About there. That's the adjustment we've just made. Next up is the model. Now, the model is the hero of this shot. So she is in the shadows, literally, as she is right now. It's not going to sell it. So what we want to do is get a power window. We want to draw a power window around the model. Soften the edges right up so you can't tell. Awesome. And then we want to go over to the color wheels, the curves, HDR, whatever it is, and you want to make those adjustments. I'm going to use HDR for this, just my preferred selection, but anything, there's heaps of ways you can do this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the light. So I'm slowly going to bring up the exposure. And the next thing I'm going to do is bring up the shadows, just looking at my RGB parade. I'm going to keep it going. I'm just going to use the dark, which is the far left wheel. And if I click here, you'll see what it's adjusting. Just those details in her face, in her hair, and things like that. Just going to bring those down. And you start to get that contrast in the model. So I'll turn off the node so you can see what we've done. That is a huge difference, and it looks good. Oof. Ooh. Awesome. What else? What I might also do on this node is just add a little bit of more contrast, just with the contrast, just above the color wheels. I'm just going to add that contrast in just a little bit. So now we're working with something like that. I might even just bring up the mid-tones a little bit as well. Just looking at the parade down the bottom here. Awesome. The next thing I want to do is track this mask, otherwise it's going to look real weird. So we're going to head over to track, which is just here. We're going to select frame because that gives you the best track. Then we're going to hit the arrows left and right. Now what I need to be careful of here is the model is going to move her shoulder, so it might throw off the track a bit. So just keeping an eye on that, making sure it stays on her at all times. So you can see her elbows dropped out a little bit in her hand, so we might get some discoloration there. And the back of her. Cool. Now I actually don't mind that track, it's not too bad. But you can see here, her hands are sort of just missing. So I might just move it over a little bit and I'm just going to track that again just so it's perfect. Awesome. So that is what we have. Now I don't mind the fact that the window and the track sort of expands towards the end. Now we can sort of redo it again if we want, but I'm just going to leave it as it is for the purpose of this tutorial. Next up is face refinement. Now I'm not sure if the free version has this feature, but this is awesome. So basically, it's just makes those small adjustments to the model's face, but it adds so much value and it makes it look so much better. Will shoot so much better, I should say. So what we're going to do is face refinement. We're going to drag it onto this window here. We're going to hit analyze and we're going to let DaVinci do its thing. All right, DaVinci is done analyzing the clip and we're back. So as you can see here, it's done a great job analyzing her face, her lips, her nose, and her eyes. So the first thing you want to do is check your track, make sure it's all good. It is pretty good. The next thing you want to do is head over to the right hand side and untick show overlay so we can actually see what we are doing. Next up is heading over to the adjustments. Now I don't like to adjust too much, but what I like doing is adjusting the eyes. Something about like a sharp eye or a bright eye, and you can see the piercing color in her eyes just adds so much to it. So I'm going to go to eye retouching, and the first thing I'm going to do is just brighten them up a little bit, just to about there, and you can see her blue eyes are now coming through. The next thing you want to do is just add a bit of sharpening to it. We'll turn that off and on so you can see what we did. Awesome. Next thing, you can sort of add a little bit of highlight, just like sort of the general area, but not too much. You can make her look like she wore a pair of sunglasses or something while she was sun tanning. So just don't go too hard with that. And then next up is eye bag removal. So just the dark circles under their eyes. And we'll turn that off and on, and that is such a difference. Awesome. All right, guys, next is glow. So this is a feature that I believe is early on the paid version. I could be wrong. So what you want to do is search glow. And what this is going to do is just soften the highlights and just give this glowing effect. It's awesome. It's crazy good. So first thing is you want to play with the threshold and see how much you want to add in. So as you can see, as I added in, it sort of comes to the side of the model around a bandana and things like that. So not too much. You don't want to blow out the highlights too much, but about there is good. And the spread. So I'm just going to keep it about to where it is. Cool. Turn that off and on to see what we've done. Yeah, awesome. Now what I might do is I might just head back to that power window that was based on the sun, and then I might head to HDR, and I'm gonna actually bring down the glow a little bit so we recover a bit of detail there. Cool. All right, now the last step that I like to do is sharpening. Sharpening just cleans up the footage so much. You don't want to over sharpen it, but just that little bit. So head over to the blur sharpen tab down the bottom here. And the next thing you want to do is hit Shift H, and then you want to hit AB. Now this is going to give you a grey frame, but it's going to help you see what you are sharpening. So let's start by dropping the radius down to 48. And as I zoom in, you can see it's sort of, the bandana, her hair, her eyes. Behind her, we have a bit of details in the window frames and stuff like that. And you can sort of just play with the scaling as well to see what you actually do want to involve there. I like it. Yeah, I think at around 1920 is going to give me what I want. But once again, have a play with that feature, guys, and see what you like. So we'll hit Shift H, then we'll click AB again, turn that off. Oh, sorry, Shift H and then Shift H again, and then we've got our image. Last up, we've got the LUT again, so we'll just turn that off and on just to see what it does. Awesome. And that there is our finished product, guys. So that is the log file, and then that is the finished file. There you go, guys. That's how I set up my node tree. That's how I color grade. I hope that helped. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you in the next one.